Hey guys, Tyler here, and this is the Garage Warrior podcast and video cast. And I'm super excited today to have on the call with me Dan Ritchie. How's it going today, Dan?
It's going really well. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man, I really appreciate you taking time to come on the show. I should have said Dan Ritchie, PhD, shouldn't I?
Yeah, you should have. You should have. That's right. That's right.
You don't want to go to school for all those years and not have people have that PhD behind your name. Well,
Yeah. People call me Dr. Dan quite a bit, but yeah, Dan is just fine. So.
all right, Dan. Well, for people who may not know who you are, can you just kind of get started with a 50,000-mile view? Who are you, and what are you hoping to teach people?
Yeah. So, a lot of people say, well, how does a personal trainer have a PhD in the first place? Doesn't that kind of mean you should be an academic or a researcher? I was training clients in Wisconsin at a large health club, and I kept getting more and more clients in their 50s and 60s and even 70s coming to me with really quality of life issues. Like I want to keep downhill skiing, or I want to keep playing tennis, or I'm a 7 handicap golfer, and I cannot tee up a golf ball because I can't bend over anymore. And I just fell in love with that population, and I've kind of always been a learning junkie, and I like school. I'll admit it. I like learning. I like being in a classroom. And so coming to Purdue to get my PhD here in West Lafayette, Indiana made sense. And I spent 5 years researching and studying aging and fitness. And what I found was wow, it's really amazing how fit and healthy people can stay. And most of what we thought of aging is not really aging as much as it is long-term sedentary living. It's just people aren't living well, and so they wake up at 70 and have to deal with the ramifications of that. And so the research shows you can be 75 and have almost the same functional ability that you and I have. I mean, you can play golf at a high level, you can horseback ride, you can downhill ski, you can, climb Mount Kilimanjaro. You really can do just about anything. Sure, you're not going to suit up for the NFL, but the reality is you can live a really high quality of life and do that well into your 90s. And while doing my PhD, I opened my own training facility, really focused on the 50-plus market, and our average age client is 58. We've got clients in their 70s and 80s. Yesterday I was training 3 people, 75, 75, and 67. And, they're even using kettlebells and all kinds of stuff, So there really isn't sort of that ageist limitation like, oh, you're over 70, so you got to take it easy. In fact, heck no, you got to train really hard so you can maintain the best and final years of your life as best you can. So that's really my passion. That's kind of what I'm about, and I'm excited to share that with everyone.
That's awesome. You can tell you're really excited, Dan. I mean, it's evidenced by the fact that, like somebody like Jack LaLanne, who actually had rather poor genetics, could live well into his 90s, extremely fit. And, you don't have to go as extreme as Jack, in order to get there, too. Like I said, he had poor genetics. He went way on the right side in order to get there. But I'd be interested in kind of opening up a discussion to start out with about kind of what you see as what people are doing wrong with people in that 40, 50, and older age group. Because, with the advent of things like CrossFit and like nothing but high intensity this and high intensity that and Olympic lifting and kettlebells and all this stuff, it seems like everybody just forgot the fact that you can still make progress doing push-ups and pull-ups and body rows and squats and lunges and things like that.
Yeah. I think honestly, people make a lot of mistakes. One huge mistake they make, especially with people over 55, is they do way too many seated activities. We almost think, oh, well, let's take it easy on their hips and knees, so let's do leg presses or leg extensions or machine-based stuff, and let's be honest, that's not functional, right? Sure, there may be do an occasional leg press if somebody's having trouble getting out of a chair, but for the most part, I always tell people, do everything you can standing, because it's going to be the most functional, the most bang for your buck. So even things like barbell bench press, I mean, that's not very functional, right? I mean, why are you going to do that in real life? Have to push 200 pounds away while you're standing up. So, we do cable presses standing up. How strong are you on your feet? And so that's a huge mistake. The other big mistake I think people make is the impact. We underestimate the average 50-year-old, the amount of wear and tear they have on their knees. I mean, you and I have enough wear and tear on our knees that we probably should be limiting the impact. But you get to the age of 50, your cartilage isn't quite as thick. Your joints are starting to thin out a little bit in terms of their articular surface. let's face it, people are getting arthritis in their knees and their hips. So do we want them doing 50 burpees and 50 squat jumps and all these, dynamic, explosive, great exercises, but maybe we can limit the number or be smarter about it or even reduce the impact. I mean, you can do burpees without the impact. You can do total body extensions instead of squat jumps. I mean, there are ways you can train smart,
Right.
really hard, really intense. We're not going easy. We're just saying, let's be a little kinder to your knees. If your knees are screaming the next 2 days, maybe we need to train a little smarter.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. That's really good as you break it down into just the sitting too much, the non-functional movements. And to me, like you said, you do a standing chest press. If anybody's ever done that with a cable machine or a cable or something like that, I mean, you realize how much that transitions to your core.
Yes.
Do you feel like that core strength is one of the missing secrets in longevity?
Absolutely. I mean, a vast number of our clients that come in their 50s are basically saying, could you reintroduce me to my core? Because I have lost connection with my core sometime in the last 20 years. I mean, essentially people sit too much, right? We don't use our core. We don't know how to engage our core, and we simply don't use it. And so literally picking up a 2 or 3 pound item off the floor, we hurt our back. And that's just ridiculous. And so to me, yeah, it's a lot more functional to say, how much can you push and pull standing on your feet? Because your core has to control that movement now, right? As opposed to, let's put you on a machine or put you on a bench or stabilize your core. Well, now you might be pretty strong, but your core and your hip, and so it doesn't translate to real life. So our principle is always, whenever possible, do things standing.
Yeah, that's a really good principle, man. I like that. Do you guys do a fair blend of body weight training as well as, dumbbells and barbells and stuff like that? What do you guys typically do with your clients?
Yeah, definitely. We do a lot of body weight training. Lunges, squats, step ups, all of those are going to be core in our program, whether we're including weights or not. So if we add dumbbells to that or medicine balls to that, we certainly like push ups. We like mountain climbers. We like a lot of activities where people have to move their feet in dynamic ways. So when I say lunges, I'm really meaning about 10 different kinds of lunges, right? So there's the whole 12 o'clock matrix, right? All different directions, all different angles, and then you can add all kinds of transverse and even frontal plane drivers, right? So if you put dumbbells in somebody's hand and say, do a normal lunge, but now I want you to take the dumbbells and rotate them this direction, well, boy, do we see a lot of hip instability in people and their ability to control through the core, right? Or we can ask for a rotational driver, right? So do a lunge and rotate either dumbbells or a medicine ball. A lot of core instability there. So, so when I say lunges, I'm literally talking about maybe 10 to 20 different exercises. And even squats we can vary with foot position, wide squats, narrow squats, staggered stance squats, put people in real life circumstances, right? I mean, the average 50 plus person doesn't care about squatting 300, 400 pounds. What they care about is moving better, having the strength they need to move things about the house, to garden, to do, sports with their kids, whatever it is. So we try to make it more real life.
That's cool. Conversely to that is, a lot of powerlifters who can squat 3, 4, 5, 600 pounds couldn't do a lunge with a rotation anyways because they've lost the mobility to be able to do so.
Right, absolutely. Yeah, you start challenging people's balance and some of those things, and really strong people have trouble. It's always interesting to me, some of the guys that can bench press a lot. Well, that's great. You can bench press 400 pounds. I'm not sure how useful that is in reality. But then you ask them to do push-ups on medicine balls, and they can't do it. They can't do one push-up because they don't have the stability when they're trying to push something on an unstable environment. Even though they can probably bench press way more than me, way more than their body weight, all of a sudden they realize, wow, I don't have the body control and the shoulder stability to even push my own body weight.
Yeah. So would you guys say that you're trying to kind of train natural movement? Like you're trying to take scenarios where people would actually be doing stuff and train those natural movements with different kind of cofactors for balance and coordination and mobility and flexibility?
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the reasons why we use the word functional movement so much, is that if something doesn't really translate to human function, then then my first question is, why are we doing it? Now,
Right.
there may be a reason. So I think a leg press serves a purpose, even though it's really not functional. But there are times when clients come in and lower body strength is their number one issue, right? Like getting in and out of a car is a challenge. Getting in and
Right.
out of a chair is a challenge. So is the leg press useful? Yeah, it's useful. Is it high on the functional level? No. Squats are more functional, So I typically challenge even my own training staff, like, why are you using this exercise movement? What outcome is it going to lead to? And so for the most part, we want most things to be human functional movements, and a lot of times we try to make them complex, because the reality is human movement is complex. Getting something out of a top shelf that's a reach up over my shoulder is a very complex three-dimensional movement that we take for granted. We don't think much about it, but a 55 or 60-year-old winds up hurting their back. They hurt their shoulder. Maybe they slip or they fall, they lose their balance if it's way up high, right? So we train all those kind of movement patterns, like what's it like to take a weight off the floor, rotate it across your body, change directions, and do all those kinds of things. And sometimes our clients think we're just making stuff up, but there's real rationale behind it, right? Like, we need to be able to move things across our body. We need to be able to reach. Reaching is a huge functional component. It's actually measured in the research. Like, if my ability to reach forward is compromised, then I'm more likely to actually fall at some point, because I can't reach out for things, even like to reach to open a door.
Sure.
And become a challenge, So forward reaching, downward reaching, picking stuff up off the floor. People fall in their homes and get hurt picking stuff up off the floor. It's as simple as that. And so we sort of laugh about it, but if you're 55, 60, 65 years old, boy, we're going to train you for that stuff, because that stuff's going to make a huge difference in your 70s and 80s in terms of living at home and doing all the things you want to do.
That reminds me of a story, Dan. I had a client that was a marathon runner, and I started coaching her, and the first thing I do is I kind of assess movement, a lot like you guys do. And she had a major valgus collapse on her right side. And for those of you guys listening, that means her knee wobbles in as it goes from flexion to extension. And this happened during her squat, during her lunge, during her walk, during her run. It happened all the time. And she said, my knee hurts on the inside, and my hip hurts on the outside, and my ankle gets sore. Okay, well, this is we know what's going on here, right? It's pretty obvious. And so she's like, well, how come nobody ever taught me this when I was running? And I said, it's crazy how many people will work with a client on their squat for so long to perfect their squat, and then nobody out there is teaching somebody how to walk, jog, or run correctly. And so you're talking about that in the same respect, that people teach you how to do deadlifts and kettlebell swings and burpees and whatnot, but they don't teach you the right way to pick your purse up and hang it on the hook.